The second axiom indicates that any relationship of power is legitimate if the aim of that relationship is the caring growth of the subordinate. If we were to apply this axiom to an organization, then we'd have to apply it to how power functions in organizations, which basically means we have to apply it to hierarchies. In a sense, there are four personality types in a hierarchy. There's a person who sits right on top of the corporate cake called Lord Creosote, who is fundamentally answerable to a shareholder or a principal for the performance of the organization. So if it's a capitalist enterprise, he's responsible to the shareholder for a profit. If he's the head of a military organization or the head of an army, he'd be responsible to the state for a security result. However, this result that he produces, he doesn't do himself. There's somebody else who does it for him, a person that you could call the boss. Now, the boss is a very different person. He's generally not older than 45. He goes to a gymnasium 3 times a week. The other 4 days he rides a bicycle. He's gone to a business school. In fact, he's probably got 3 business school qualifications in his pocket. He's the person who produces the result that Lord Creosote gives to the principal. So this is your officer class. This is the person who has the plans and produces the strategies that produce the result that Lord Creosote gives to a principal. However, the result that he produces for Lord Creosote, he doesn't do himself. There's somebody else who does it for him, a person that you could call the overseer. He's generally a lot older. He's in his mid-50s. He's considered to be quite a scary person. He's the equivalent of an NCO in a military organization. His role and the boss's role are very different. The boss's role is to work out how we're going to achieve the result that's required of us. The overseer's role is to get somebody to go and do those things that will produce the result. And then you get the poor soul whose lot in life it is to do things that produce results, called the worker. And then you get a job that the worker does and a result which is the consequence of what the worker does. The problem in all of this surfaces as soon as you ask anybody who executes power in the execution of his job what his job is. If you went to the boss and you asked him, "Excuse me, sir, what's your job? What do you actually account for to Lord Creosote?" He's going to say to you, "My job is to achieve a result through people. I go to the market, I buy myself X units of overseer kilojoules or labor, Y units of worker kilojoules of labor. I bring that back to my organization. I add them to the right places in the organogram. I add a few more resources to this. I shake the whole thing up and the whole thing produces a result for me." The problem with this basic idiom is that it makes logical sense in the head, which is why they teach people this kind of nonsense at business schools, which is why you shouldn't send your children to business schools because it's morally damaging. Because ask yourself who actually produces the result. And clearly the person who produces the result is the worker. And what you're saying to the worker is that, listen, you are the human resource that I'm going to use to produce a result for a shareholder. Now, when you use people as resources, you do to them what you do to any resource. When you use a resource, you consume it. In other words, the person who's doing the job, who should be the most committed, feels used. And as a result, he has a broken heart. And the consequence of that is that both the job and the result are in crisis. So what we're arguing is that unless you have the worker's deliberate and unconditional commitment to the job, you actually have very little at all. In fact, the success of the enterprise is based on the degree to which he commits to the job and is willing to go the extra mile in the execution of the job. But that commitment comes at a price, and the price is that the power that is exercised over him is legitimate. It does the thing that power is supposed to do for people, which is caring growth. And clearly the person who exercises power over the worker is the overseer, which means that the overseer's job actually is the caring growth of the people working for him. In our experience, when you tell a person in a supervisory role in an organization to care for and grow the people working for them, you normally get quite a disbelieving response. Because their experience is that in the first instance, they aren't accountable for caring for and growing the people working for them. They're accountable for a result. And secondly, even if they wanted to care for and grow somebody, they themselves don't feel cared for and grown. In other words, they also have broken hearts. Which means to say that the boss's job clearly is to care for and grow the overseer. And the implication of that is that what is at issue at every level of the hierarchy is exactly the same thing. It's the legitimacy of a relationship of power against core criteria that in a sense came to us with our mother's milk. These are core criteria that are at the root of being human. In any relationship of power, it doesn't matter where it is in the hierarchy, that relationship is only legitimate if the aim of that relationship is the care and growth of the subordinate. What that actually means is that it's concerned with an inversion of means and ends. You remember when we spoke about the difference between the Tony and the Fred interactions earlier on. We said that if I had two people working for me, Tony and Fred, I could use my experience in two very different ways on them. I could say to Tony, Tony, in 1980 I did what you have to do now, and what I did worked. Don't argue with me, shut up and go and do what I did. In the Fred interaction, if I said to Fred, in 1980 I did what you have to do now, and what I did worked, it might be helpful to you, take a look at it, I'd have a very different response from Fred. He'd probably be far more willing. And what we noticed is that the difference between the two isn't just that I was being more compulsive with Tony. A key difference was that I was actually, in Tony's case, I was using him as my means in order to get a job done. Whereas in the Fred interaction, I was using the job as the means in order to teach him something. And that inversion of means and ends changed the intent in the interaction. In the Tony interaction, my intention was to take something from him. And in the Fred interaction, my intention was to give him something. We also concluded that if we define leadership as achieving a result through people, the effect of that is that we have the Tony interaction, because the intent in that statement is take. So if we say care and growth is consistent with the Fred interaction, that suggests that we have to invert means and ends. And from one point of view, it almost sounds as if this is illogical, because what we're saying is that we're trying to achieve people through results. Now, that might not be as outrageous as it seems. If we take that insight back to our hierarchy, and we applied that insight to a coaching context, what becomes apparent is that in any team sport, you have very similar things at issue as what you have in a workplace. You have a coach, you have the team who play the game, you have the game that gets played on Saturday, and the result that goes up on the scoreboard on Saturday afternoon. If the coach had this peculiar view that it was his role to produce the result, and that he was going to use the team as his means to produce it, there'd be some really nasty consequences to that. Say, for example, you play in a team sport, whatever the team sport is of your choice. Let's say it's soccer. And you get a new coach. And the first time you meet this coach, you're all sitting, the entire team sitting in the change room, and the coach says to you, without batting an eyelid, he says, listen, you lot, my job is to produce a result, and I'm going to use you as my means or my resources to produce the result. If the coach had that view, the question is, how would you play? And clearly you'd play disastrously, because you'd experience the coach as being absolutely arrogant. You'd have a broken heart, and the very last thing you'll give the coach is commitment. So what we're arguing is that in fact we have to understand that it's the team, it's the players who play the game and produce a result. And that in fact the coach's job is to coach or to care for and grow the team. Now that doesn't mean to say that he therefore dismisses the game and the result. In order for him to coach the team, he has to go to the game on Saturday. He has to look at what's happening on the field. He has to look at what's happening on the scoreboard. But that doesn't mean to say those two things are his job. Those two things are his tool to do his job, which is to coach the players on Wednesday. In other words, he quite literally uses the game, the task, and the result as his means, whereby he enables extraordinary athletes or extraordinary players. And when he has this view of his role, he creates a real commitment in the players, which then give you extraordinary results and an extraordinary game.